Have you ever noticed how, like, one tiny tech glitch can, like, totally derail your whole day?
Oh, yeah.
Like, your phone freezes and suddenly you're, like, questioning all technology?
Yeah.
But then, like, when a teammate makes a mistake, it's like, well, we're all human.
Right. It is fascinating how differently we react to those two things.
Isn't it?
Yeah,
So get this. There's actual science behind it.
of course there is.
It is all about this recent study from the journal Biological Psychology.
Interesting.
It's called To Err is Human: Differences in Performance Monitoring ERPs During Interactions with Human Co-Actors and Machines. So we're going to unpack how our brains
Yeah.
actually react to slip-ups from humans versus machines. This study had people play a game where they thought they were working with another person or a computer program.
Clever.
They had to press keys, and it triggered these visual responses. It was kind of like a chain reaction, mimicking how we often rely on other people's actions in real work.
They call this a leader-follower setup.
Oh, interesting.
And what they were really interested in is how we monitor performance,
Okay.
both ours and others. So it's not just about making mistakes, it's about how we process the mistakes that we see.
So they were measuring their brainwaves while they were doing this.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Specifically ERPs.
ERPs.
Yeah, think of them like electrical signatures of your brain,
Okay.
showing how it reacts to different events.
So like a lie detector, but for oops moment.
Exactly. And they focused on two specific ERP components. The first is O-earn, which happens really fast.
Okay.
Like milliseconds after your brain detects that something is wrong. Super fast.
Cool.
And then the second is OPE,
OPE.
which comes in a bit later.
And might be more related to like conscious awareness of the error and then adjusting your strategy based on that.
Okay, so are you ready for, like, the big reveal? The study found a stronger O-earn when the mistakes came from the computer,
What?
not the human partner.
That is so interesting.
Isn't that wild?
It is, because
Right.
a lot of previous research
Yeah.
has suggested that we would pay more attention to human errors.
Right, because we're social creatures.
Right, but this suggests...
This is the opposite.
Yeah, and I think what it suggests is that because we expect machines to be perfect,
Yeah.
their errors actually violate our expectations more. And so they create a stronger
Yeah.
prediction error signal in our brains.
It's like that shock. And think about,
Yeah.
like, what are the implications of this?
Yeah, what does this mean?
Especially for, like,
Like in the workplace?
leaders,
Yeah.
managers, anyone working with teams or automated systems.
With all the AI stuff coming up now?
Right.
This is huge.
Are we building in too much trust in machines
Yeah.
and then leading to complacency?
Exactly.
Should we be designing technology to have some human-like imperfections to make these errors less jarring?
That is so interesting.
Right.
It makes you wonder if air is actually
Is what?
unexpectedly robotic.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it really challenges our assumptions about these things, doesn't it?
It really does.
And what's really fascinating is that this research builds upon a whole body of work in this area, exploring how we monitor errors in these social contexts. We're slowly piecing together a deeper understanding of how our brains are wired for this kind of collaboration with humans and with machines.
So, like, this isn't just like some isolated study that came out of nowhere.
No, not at all.
It's a whole backstory here.
There is a really rich history of research on this. Think about it. Like, when you see someone mess up, your brain often reacts as if you made the mistake yourself.
Really?
Yeah, it's like this mini mental simulation of their action, and you almost experience their error as your own. It's like a sense of shared experience.
Yeah.
And it goes right down to the neural level. So, like, previous studies have shown this in people's behavior. They'll slow down after witnessing an error.
That makes sense. Like, you learn from other people's mistakes.
Exactly. And also, neuroimaging studies have shown that similar brain areas light up when we make our own errors and when we observe them in others. So this idea of empathy for errors is pretty well established, but this new research adds kind of a new twist by looking at the difference between human versus machine slip-ups.
Oh, interesting.
And that's where we see these surprising findings with the O-earn being stronger for computer errors, which is interesting because it contradicts some earlier studies that either found no difference or even a stronger response to human errors.
So it's not like settled science?
No, not at all. It's an evolving field.
That is really interesting. But I'm still trying to wrap my head around why we would react more to a computer messing up. Shouldn't we be more used to technology being glitchy?
I think that's the thing. We've come to expect a certain level of reliability from machines that we don't necessarily expect from humans.
Right, because we know we mess up.
Right, we factor in that human fallibility. And so when a machine fails, it's like it violates that trust. And it creates this bigger sense of surprise. And that's why you get that stronger prediction error signal.
So it's almost like we're giving machines the benefit of the doubt.
Yes.
Until they prove us wrong. That is so interesting.
It is, isn't it? And so this has big implications.
What does this mean for us?
For how we design technology and how we interact with it.
Should we be designing technology to be more glitchy like us?
Should we be building in some human-like imperfections to make the errors less jarring?
That is a really good question.
Or would that then erode the trust?
Right, because if they mess up all the time, then it's like, why are we using this?
Right.
What's the point?
Exactly. It's a delicate balance.
And what about like for teamwork? If we're more forgiving of human errors, does that create like a more relaxed work environment?
It could also lead to complacency, right? A lack of accountability.
Yeah.
It's not like a simple answer. This research really opens up like a Pandora's box of questions about error culture, leadership, performance management in this increasingly tech-driven world that we live in.
It's a really good point.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got our brains on high alert for like robot blunders. But the study also looked at the OPE signal, right? That later response that might be more linked to like actually adjusting your strategy after you make a mistake. What did they find about that?
So they found that the OPE was consistently larger in the non-social condition, regardless of whether the feedback was correct or incorrect.
Interesting.
Meaning our brains are paying more attention to feedback when we're interacting with a machine.
So we're taking what the computer says more seriously, even if it's wrong.
It seems like it, yeah.
Like we're giving it more authority.
It could be that we perceive machines as being more objective, more consistent in their responses.
Right.
So we're more likely to pay attention to that feedback and to use it to calibrate our own performance.
So the computer's like our coach.
Right, exactly. It's like an unbiased coach, even if we don't realize it consciously.
Right. We're not thinking about it that way, but our brains are doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
But could that lead to us being like overly reliant on that feedback? What happens to our own intuition? Are we losing our skills because we're just relying on the computer?
It's a valid concern. It raises these important questions about how do we find that sweet spot between leveraging machine feedback, but then also maintaining our own critical thinking skills.
You know what this whole conversation is making me think about?
What?
I'm thinking about how I view errors now, both mine and other people's.
Yeah.
And even those moments when technology throws a tantrum, maybe it's not just me being impatient.
Right.
Maybe it's my brain going haywire.
It's a reminder that we're still in the early stages of understanding this complex interplay between human and machine behavior.
Right. We don't even know what we don't know yet.
Exactly. And this study is just one piece of the puzzle, but it's a really valuable piece because it offers these practical insights for anyone working in this increasingly tech-driven environment.
That's a really good point. So we've talked about the brain stuff and we've talked about errors, but the study also looked at how much people actually believed they were interacting with a human or a machine.
That's right, they did.
What did they find there?
So it turns out that not everyone was totally buying it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the average belief level was only around 57%.
57?
Yeah. So there was a good chunk of people in the study who are like, I'm not sure about this. But here's the thing.
Right.
Even with that level of skepticism, the researchers didn't find any significant difference in the brain responses based on whether people actually believed the cover story or not.
So like, even if I'm sitting there like, yeah, I don't really think this is a robot.
Right.
My brain is still reacting like it's a robot.
It is interesting, right?
Yeah.
It suggests that our unconscious assumptions about human versus machine behavior are really driving those initial brain responses.
Wow.
Regardless of what we consciously believe.
So are we like more programmed than we realize?
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? But here's where I think this gets really practical.
Okay, let's bring it home.
Right, especially for leaders. If our brains are wired to treat machine errors differently, how should that influence how we give feedback? How we delegate tasks, how we hold people accountable in these teams where we have both humans and machines.
Are we going to have to like develop a whole new set of rules basically for how to deal with these kind of situations?
It might require some adjustments to how we think about these things.
Do we have to be more mindful of the different expectations we have for humans versus machines?
Absolutely. I think that's key.
Because we can't hold them to the same standard.
Exactly. And I think even more importantly, how do we foster a culture where people feel comfortable acknowledging and learning from both human and machine errors?
Because it's going to happen.
It's the future of work.
Yeah.
It's hybrid teams.
Yeah, it's like we need to create a space where it's okay to say like, whoops, the algorithm messed up just as easily as we would say, my bad, I made a mistake. And then what about like training, development? Do we need to change the way we train people?
I think we need to equip people with the skills to work effectively alongside these machines, which include understanding their limitations, recognizing their potential biases, and being able to critically evaluate their output.
Oh, yeah, that's a really good point. We can't just take what they say as gospel.
Right.
We have to think about it.
Exactly.
So for our listeners out there, whether you're leading a team, building a new tech product, or even just dealing with like your own everyday tech frustrations. Remember, the next time you run into a really annoying error, just pause for a second and think about it. Is it human? Is it machine? And how is your brain playing a role in how you're reacting to that error?
That's a great takeaway.
It's food for thought, isn't it? And who knows, as we continue to research this, what other like crazy insights we're going to uncover in this crazy automated world that we live in.